What's up guys, Andre here, and today I want to share my experiences on using Visual Studio Code coming from Sublime Text. Now before I start, I think it's important to outline what type of developer I am. If you've seen any of my other videos before, you'll know that I'm primarily a Laravel developer who does the majority of his work inside of Laravel. I also do a lot of front-end stuff too, like HTML, CSS, and lately a lot of Vue.js, but generally speaking, that's from within the Laravel framework. I've been using Sublime for years now, and aside from curiosity, I didn't really have any reason to switch over. I've gotten so used to my keyboard shortcuts, all the packages I've installed, and just general workflow that I felt like it would be very difficult to get me to switch to another editor. However, it feels like everyone's switching over to VS Code and loving all the features it has to offer. Every article I read, every podcast I listen to, I even went to a conference here in Toronto where there was a talk on VS Code, and it seems like everyone's gravitating towards it. So I figured, why not give it a shot? It's been my primary editor for about 2 weeks now, and I'm going to give you guys my opinions and my experiences on how I feel about it. So without further ado, let's get started. Now I'm going to take my face off now because I want you guys to see the entire screen, and this was just sort of an experiment to just show my face to you guys for the first time and just make this a little bit more personable. So yeah, let's get started. Now here we are inside Visual Studio Code. The version I'm using is called Visual Studio Code Insiders Edition, which is the cutting edge version that gets updated daily. The reason I'm using this version is because I already have the normal version installed, and that version already has all my settings and it's already configured, and I wanted to start from scratch so you guys can see what I'm doing. So again, there's two versions. The orange one is the normal version and the green one is the Insiders Edition, which is what we're using now and which is starting from scratch. So a lot of this video is just making VS Code work like Sublime Text, since my muscle memory is already tuned for a Sublime Text workflow. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is regarding how to open Visual Studio Code. If you used Sublime before, you know that you can use Sublime dot or subl dot to open Sublime Text in the current directory that you're in if you're in your command line. Now I want to do something similar with Visual Studio Code and do something like that to open it up, but you have to do something in order to get that to work. So if you press Command-Shift P to open the command palette and search for path, you'll see that there's a command here that says install code insiders command in path. If you just do that, it's installed. Go back to your terminal and you can do code-insiders, and that'll open up a new instance of your project. It also works for code. Again, this is the other version. So yeah. Now the next thing I want to do is install a theme. So just hit Command-Shift P, install extensions, and you can search for the theme you want. I'm going to install Material theme since it's the same theme I use in Sublime. So there's one there. I like how you can just click into it. You can see all the details of it without having to go into your browser. So from here we can install it like this. Just click on it. And one thing I don't like is after you install an extension, you have to reload the window for some reason. It's just a minor annoyance. Okay, so it's installed. So let's activate it. So Command-Shift P again. Go to color theme here. And it should be here. There it is, Material theme. And you can see it updates in real time. And let's open a file here. Let's see. There you go. The next thing I want to do is just change some general settings. So to get into your settings, hit Command comma, just like in Sublime. And you can see all the default settings here, and these are your user settings on the right side. Now I'm going to paste my settings in so you don't have to watch me go through all of them. It's mainly just aesthetics, and I'll go through each one of them. So font size is pretty self-explanatory. Line height is pretty self-explanatory. The font that I use is called fire a code. Word wrap is on. This will just insert a new line at the end of each file. This will trim the trailing white space. Smooth scrolling on, and multi-cursor is just so when you hit command and click, that will insert multi-cursor. So let's save that, and that will take into effect. One setting that's in Sublime that didn't port over to VS Code is the ability to just make my caret a bit thicker. You see the blinky caret there. It's a bit too thin for me. If you go over Sublime and open my settings, extra, you'll see that there's an option here for extra caret width. 1 is default. You'll see it gets a bit thinner when you save it. 2, it's a bit thicker. 3, you'll see it get even more thicker. I like it at 2, but for some reason you can't do that in VS Code. If you can, please let me know in the comments. Maybe I'm just missing something. So the next thing I want to talk about is Cmd P and how that works within Visual Studio Code. For the most part, it works the same way as it does in Sublime. You just hit Cmd P, search for something, and it fuzzy searches it. But the one biggest annoyance in VS Code is, say I'm working on this file, and the last file I was working on is this welcome.blade.php file. You can't just hit Command P enter to go back to the last file. You have to press down to go to the last file. Now I use this all the time in Sublime to switch between two files, and it's just a part of my muscle memory, and it's kind of annoying that that did not port over to Visual Studio Code. Now there's actually a GitHub issue on it where a lot of people are complaining, and hopefully it gets merged into a future version of Visual Studio Code. So the alternative for that is, instead of Command P enter to go to the last file you worked on, just hit Control Tab, and that will switch between two files. Another thing with Command P is, if we search for something, we'll see that it's searching within the vendor folder, which is where all your packages get installed. Typically speaking, you don't want that. So let's go to our user settings again, and let's just search for exclude here. And you'll see down here, there's a setting for that. So just add that here in your settings. Search.exclude. Let's exclude vendor. And when we go back, all the vendor instances should be gone now, and they are. The next thing I want to do is install Sublime Text Key Map. You can also go over here to install an extension. So let's search for Sublime Key Map. There you go, Sublime Text Key Map. And what this is going to do is port over all, not all, but majority of the key mappings that are in Sublime Text. So now, after I installed this the first time, I just did a test of the most popular ones that I use all the time, and most of them worked. So one that I use all the time is Command-Shift-D to duplicate a line. Another one that I use all the time is Control-Shift-K to delete a line. Another one I use all the time is Control-Command up and down to move the line. Another one I use Command-KB to hide and show the sidebar. And another one I use is Command-J to join lines. One shortcut that was not ported over to VS Code is called Expand Selection to Tag. Let me show you in Sublime. I only used it for this specific reason, is just to select something within a tag. So for example, this, I'd hit Command-Shift-A and it would select whatever's inside the tag. In Sublime that was called Expand Selection to Tag, but unfortunately that does not work in VS Code. Here, I'm hitting Command-Shift-A here, nothing's happening. Well, that's because it's just named something else. It doesn't work exactly the same, but for my purposes, for just selecting something within tags, it works. So you just have to bind it or find the shortcut. So Command Shift P, if we search for shortcuts, we can open the keyboard shortcuts. And in VS Code, it's called Expand Select, I think. There you go. So the keyboard shortcut is Control Shift Command Right. That is too many lines, so I'm gonna rebind it to Command Shift A. There you go. And now hit Command Shift A. There you go. It selects whatever is between the tags. There's another shortcut that I use all the time that was not ported to VS Code. For any value, if I hold Control and press up and down, it should increment or decrement it by 1. I'll show you in Sublime. If I hold Control up and down, you can see that it works there, but it doesn't work in VS Code. Now, for some reason, it's not working on the Insider's build, so I'll show you on the normal version. It works here because I already have it set up, but to set it up, all you have to do is go into your shortcuts and just search for increment, and there you go. You can bind whatever key binding you want. I have it set to Control up and decrement to Control down, and that should work for you. So the next thing I want to talk about is Laravel Blade. As you can see, it doesn't recognize Blade files by default. It just thinks it's PHP. So to fix that, let's install a package called Laravel Blade Snippets. Now it's called Laravel Blade Snippets, but if you take a look, it actually has syntax highlighting as well. Also, make sure you add these settings so Emmet can work inside of it. So let's go ahead and install it. Reload window, and now you can see it has proper syntax highlighting, and it also has snippets. So if you do B:, you'll see that IntelliSense will pop up, and you can do cool things like B if else, and just hit tab and that'll come up. Also has other ones like asset and stuff like that. Now don't forget to put those settings in here to make sure Emmet works inside of Blade files. Save that. And now let's double check. There you go. Emmet works inside Blade now. But one thing I noticed is the snippets don't come up within strings. Like if you wanted to use the route helper here or the URL helper and you were to type in LV:, it doesn't come up here. So to fix that, if we go into our settings again, something called Quick Suggestions right here. And as you can see, strings is set to false. So if we set that to true, IntelliSense suggestions should come up within strings. So let's just do that. True. Save. And now, if we do LV:, there you go. IntelliSense pops up, and we can do asset or whatever we want inside of a string. Now, this extension has a few bugs that are kind of annoying. Here's one of them. If I make a new div here, press tab, okay, the cursor is in the right spot, but if I press enter, it shouldn't put my cursor there. It should do it like this. And I know that's a small thing, but it really hampers my workflow. If you set the language to HTML, it works properly there. So if I switch to HTML, do a div, tab, enter, that's the way it should work. So let's set it back to Blade. Another annoyance is I always use command/ to comment things out when I don't need them. Now it works in Blade, the way it's supposed to work, but for stuff that's wrapped in either style tags, like that, comments don't work properly. Also, say you had a script tag down here. Let's just put one in there quickly. Again, that's when I did alert, and I just want to comment this out. It doesn't work. Now again, if we set the language to HTML, it does work. See, that's the way it's supposed to work. And just check the styles. If it commented out properly, it does. So you know it's an issue with the Blade extension. Hopefully that's fixed soon. There's actually issues on the GitHub page, and hopefully the maintainer fixes it soon, because that's kind of a big deal for me personally. Another bug with PHP itself is the following. If I highlight this div here, you'll see that it highlights every instance of the div, where I only wanted to highlight the closing div. Now to show you that it's PHP specific, if I change the language to PHP, it still happens. If I change the language to HTML, it still happens. There you go, it doesn't happen anymore when the language is set to HTML. And there's also an issue in GitHub. Hopefully it's fixed soon. So let's set back to Blade. And one way to not fix it, but to make it a bit better, is to install a package called, what's it called? Highlight matching tag, I think. Highlight match. Okay, this one. Highlight matching tag. And let's install that. Reload window. Now if we come back, you'll see it still highlights it, but it adds these sort of white brackets around the opening and closing tags. Now, for me personally, I don't like how that looks. I would like it to look like Sublime, like with the white square sort of look. So let's go ahead. There's actually settings you can set, and it looks much nicer. It's going to grab the settings, let's go into our user settings, and let's paste it in. Let's just paste it in. It's just making it look nicer. So there's one for the left tag, and there's also one for the right tag. If you just change this to right style, close that, and then save. If you go back, you'll see that that did not work. Why no work? Maybe you have to reload. And there you go. It looks a bit better. Yes, it still highlights it, but this is all we have for now until that PHP bug is fixed. Another thing I like to do is change the highlight selection color, because if you look here, I'm highlighting it and it's kind of too close to this other highlight color here. So I like to just change it to another color. It's just this. And the commented out one is if you want to change the other highlight color, but I'm not going to, so save that. And now you see that we have this nice blue for our own selection. So you can distinguish between this and that easily. Another thing that doesn't work as well as it does in Sublime is the re-indent line command. So for example, I have this and one of them is not indented properly. If I go ahead and do re-indent lines, like nothing happens. I'm not sure if it's either nothing happens, or if we change it to HTML and do the same thing, it re-indents other lines, which I don't want it to. See, it re-indented stuff I didn't want it to re-indent. And same for PHP files. Say for example, this is out of order, or it's not indented correctly. If I do a re-indent lines, see how it moves some of the stuff over on top? I don't want it to do that. And in Sublime, this just works. I find that it does, like 99% of the time, it does what I want it to do. And I kind of wish it worked the way it did in Sublime here in VSCode. So another feature I use in Sublime that's not on by default in VSCode is the Command R. If I hit Command R, it says there's no symbols in the file. In Sublime, you hit Command R, it shows a list of the methods you have in your class. So to fix that, you can install a package called PHP Intelephense. So let's go ahead and is this one? Yep, it's this one. Install. And now if you hit Command R, it brings up all the methods, just like how it works in Sublime. Another feature of this package, of this extension, is it allows you to right-click and then go to definition. If you want to dig deeper into the code, or if you're tracing code, or if you just want to see how something works, definitely, I use this all the time in Sublime. Another minor thing that VS Code doesn't have is the following. Let me just go into Sublime and show you. It's just a nice feature for Command P. Say I do Command P and main orders controller, and I know the method name I want to go to. If I just press @ it lists the method names and you can go directly from there. Now in VS Code you can't do that unless there's a package admin orders and you hit @ it doesn't work that way. If there's a way to do that, please let me know in the comments below, because I sometimes use that feature. Another heavily used package I use in Sublime is one called PHP Companion, which allows you to, with one keystroke, import a class. So let me show you in Sublime. So if you wanted to import the order class, say it wasn't here, all you would have to do is go to it, hit a keystroke. In my case, it's Shift F1, and it'll automatically put it here as a use statement. Now in VS Code, the equivalent package is called PHP namespace resolver. This one right here. So install that, reload, and now if we go into our user settings, look for the word import. It's down here. So down here. Sorry, not our user settings. I wanted to go into our keyboard shortcuts. Yep. And look for the word import. Here we go, import class. Let's just change it to Shift F1, because that's what I use. And let's give it a try. So say this wasn't there, and I want to import that class, Shift F1, and it doesn't work. Did I not do that? Shift F1, enter. Now this should work. Shift F1, there you go, it imports it, and we're good to go. Now let's talk about linting our PHP, and by default there's actually a linter already in VS Code, which actually works pretty well. But one thing I like to do is change it so it lints on type. So just add that to your settings file. Save it. And now you'll see that if we put an error in here, you get a nice red squiggly and it lints your PHP as you type. There you go. Now one thing I can't get working is to lint it and also detect PSR2 violations. I actually have it working in Sublime. Like for example, if we don't have a space after a namespace, then it says there must be one blank line after the namespace declaration. I just can't seem to get it to work in VSCode. I know there's a package called PHP Code Sniffer, and I follow the instructions here, but I still can't get it to work. If you manage to get it to work and lint your PHP and follow PSR2, please leave a comment in the comment section below and let me know how you got that to work. Let's talk about snippets. Now, I have a handful of snippets that I use very heavily coming from Sublime, and I find that the PHP ones do not work out of the box. So to see your snippets, just go in here, type in snippets, open user snippets, and I have a PHP one imported here called MET, which just quickly scaffolds out a function declaration in PHP. Now if I try doing that, it doesn't work, and I realized there's a conflict with PHP Intelephense for some reason. And if I disable this and reload, then now it should work. I type in MET, it does not work. Oh yeah, it does work. It's down here. See, that's a user snippet, and that works. Param. See, it's this kind of finicky code here. But you see how the snippet appears here? If you go into your settings, look for snippet suggestions right here. You do this one and set it to top. They should appear on the top. So now if I do MET, there, it appears on the top and should get you going. Let's talk about Vue for a second. A lot of Laravel developers use Vue.js as well. So let's open a Vue file. And if we open a Vue file, I like how it recommends that this extension is needed to properly view Vue templates. So let's go ahead and install that. VETUR. Okay, install. And I haven't been working too much with Vue over the last few weeks, but in the limited time that I have, it works actually really nicely. The syntax highlighting works, it lints really nicely, and so far I've had a good experience with working with Vue within VS Code. Now I just want to go over some of the other extensions that I have installed. Some of them are from Sublime, some of them are exclusive to VS Code, and I'm just going to quickly go over them so you don't have to watch me install them. So the first one is called Auto Rename Tag, which I have installed already. And as the name suggests, all it does is if you change one tag, it automatically changes the other tag. So super useful. The next one is called Import Cost, and let's just open our app.js file. And it quickly gives you an idea of how big the imported JavaScript library is. The next one is Color Highlight. So if I open a SAS file with variables, you can see that it highlights the colors available here. And actually, by default, there's a little square next to the colors. I actually take that off because I find it kind of annoying. So just add this setting in and it'll take it off. Another one I have installed is PHP Doc Blocker. So if you're being a good PHP developer, you are documenting all your methods with the param names and the return types. And all you have to do is do that, press tab, and it'll automatically pop up, and all you have to do is fill in the information there. And another one I use is called, what's it called? Ace Jumper, Code Ace Jumper. So the idea here is just to jump around as fast as you can without putting your hand on the mouse. I don't use this as often as I should, but it's a nice little extension to have. Another handy one I have is called Duplicate Action, which allows you to right-click on a file or folder and duplicate this file right away. So let's go over a few of the cool things that I really like in VS Code. I feel like I've been complaining a lot about some small things, so let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing is the file system. You can actually just drag stuff around here. If you want to move it up here, you can do that. So I really like that. You can also drag stuff in from a folder directly in from your file system, and if you just drag it in here, it'll appear there, so it's pretty cool. The built-in Git integration is pretty nice. If you click on this, you'll see all of your changes appear here. This is the equivalent of doing git status in your command line. So you'll see the three modified files here. And what's really nice about this is there is a nice visual diff here. I find that I never really used visual diffs before unless it's from within GitHub itself. But over the last few weeks I've been using this, I find that I'm using it more, and it's really a nice addition. Before, I would just do a git diff on the command line, which is not the greatest way of looking at your diffs. So yeah, this is a very nice addition. You can also commit your stuff straight from here, which is nice. You can actually add them first to the staging area, and then you can commit them with a message here. This is nice if you're just starting out with version control in Git, but personally I still go in the command line and I still do my git add. I actually have an alias, git add, and I still commit from here, but it's nice to know that you can add it in from within VS Code itself. You can also use the built-in terminal if you like. View integrated terminal right there. But personally, I don't use this because I've spent so much time already souping up my own terminal and making it work and look nice. So I personally don't use this, but by default it actually can detect that you're using Z shell. It has nice colors, so if you're still, I think it's good for someone who's just getting started on the terminal. But personally, I still use my good old iTerm for me. Now another thing I want to show you is the debugger. I'm going to open up the normal version of Visual Studio Code because there's a bit of setup to get it working in there. So once you have it working, you can actually set breakpoints, and this is pretty nice if you're used to using a debugger. And once it hits that breakpoint, debugger is here. You hit play. It's gonna listen in on that. So if we go to that actual app, and if we hit that route, if we hit that breakpoint, I mean, it's actually gonna stop. And you can debug your code from there. Okay, so if we go into here, this should hit the breakpoint and we should automatically be directed to VS Code. There you go. And you can do all the normal stuff you usually do into a debugger. You can step in, step out, step over. You can inspect the variables here. And yeah, if you're into using a debugger for debugging, it actually works really nicely. So there you have it, guys. I've given you several practical examples of the pros and cons of using Visual Studio Code for my personal workflow. I really do like it. I can see why several people have switched over. There's definitely some great features it has over Sublime Text. It's also a very active project. If you go on GitHub, you'll see that there are a ton of issues that are constantly being updated and fixed, and if you look at the commits, that is a lot of commits. However, all the minor annoyances that I've outlined throughout this video are enough to keep me onto Sublime, at least for now. Again, this is because I'm primarily a Laravel developer, and a lot of the annoyances in VS Code are PHP related. The best code editor is the one you are most productive in, and after about 2 weeks of using VS Code, I still feel like I'm more productive using Sublime Text. I'm still going to use VS Code, but if my work is primarily in Laravel, I'm going to stick with Sublime Text as my primary editor. Now that I look at it, all the people that have made the switch over to VS Code are heavy JavaScript developers, whether it's front end or back end using Node. Out of all the people I follow in the Laravel community, I've only seen Jeffrey Way of Laracasts recently use VS Code in his latest videos. Everyone else, from what I see, is either still on Sublime or PHP Storm. So I'm curious to know what you guys use. If you click on the eye in the top right of the video, there's actually a poll that I'm running that lists the most popular editors. Feel free to put your vote in or leave any of your comments below. Thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, thanks, bye!